Hey there, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for watching. Today what I'm going to do is compare the Jet JS300 to the Fender American Strat that we have on the wall there. Now this is a new guitar, the Jet JS300, and these have been getting rave reviews, people saying they feel like they're worth a lot of money. So I thought, why not compare it to a guitar that actually is worth a lot of money. So what we have is a 1991 Fender Strat Plus Deluxe, so it's a little bit better than a standard or upgraded model. Not a direct comparison. This is more of a vintage style Strat, whereas the Deluxe is a bit more of a modern take. At least it was in 1991. So let's get started. We can start with the headstock. Obviously this one is a little bit ugly. Let's segue to the Fender. And there we go. That's the Fender Strat headstock. Of course, it's the right shape. Looks great. This is not my favorite Fender logo, but it certainly looks better than the Jet. While we're here, let's take a look at the tuners. These are obviously high quality tuners. Look like locking tuners with the knobs on the back, but they are in sort of a, I guess it'd be a brushed steel look. Kind of funky, if it's your thing. Let's segue to the Jet. So here's the tuners on the Jet. A little more traditional looking tuners, sealed tuners. Now I will say I actually prefer the buttons on the Jet, just a little more my style, but that's a personal preference. I would say the tuners on the Fender are of a better quality, but they both do a great job. Let's move forward to the neck and the nut. This nut is really well cut, but it looks to be a cheapish plastic. But the action is fantastic. And let's segue to the Fender. Okay, so there's the Fender, and as you can see, being the deluxe version, this has a funky nut. Looks like the material is the same as the tuners, some kind of brushed, maybe aluminum. But it looks like a cool nut. I can't really say I see any problem with it. The strings go straight through it, which is nice, and definitely looks expensive. The action is about the same as on the Jet, and it's near perfect. So now we can look at the fret ends to see how they're finished, and they look great. Not exceptional, but very good. Nothing you would complain about, and they feel good. Nice and smooth. Let's segue to the Jet end. These fret ends are finished about the same. I would say they feel just as good. If anything, they're a little bit pulled in from the edge of the fingerboard, and this fingerboard has rolled edges, which I can feel the difference. It's a little more comfortable. So that's the Jet. And now we look at the inlay work, little round inlays. By this point, I think every company's getting those perfect, but let's segue and check out the Fender. Okay, so there's the Fender, and you can see, yeah, of course, they're perfect as well. Now I will notice when we're here, let's take a look at the fingerboard itself. The grain, the quality of the wood, it looks fantastic. Let's segue back to the Jet. Okay, there's the Jet, and the wood looks a little more generic. I can't say it's anything wrong with it, but that's probably not, they didn't look through 1,000 pieces to find this one. It's just likely whatever came up. Not to complain, but it is what it is. Working up to the body, the Jet has definitely a Stratocaster shape. It's not modified in any way other than it has its own little comfort contour in the cutaway. But it's nice and thick. And it is a bit lighter than the Fender. So let's look at the Fender body. Okay, there's the Fender. Obviously, this is going to be the correct shape and thickness. This is a Fender Strat. It's not a copy. And it is a little heavier, so there's some substance difference. It feels a little more expensive. And of course, it's flawless paint job and everything. While we're here, let's take a look at the bridge. So this being a Plus Deluxe has the funky saddles. Really nice. You can tell it's top quality hardware. Let's segue to the Jet. Okay, so the Jet, as you can see, it's a nice bridge, but not up to the same quality as on the Fender. It's visually obvious this is a cheaper bridge. Not to say that it performs poorly, just that it looks a little cheap. Now this does have a friction fit whammy bar, which is kind of cool. I'm not sure about the Fender, to be honest. While we're here, let's look at the plastics. I've mentioned in other videos, these knobs look ridiculously cheap. And let's check out the real Fenders, see what I'm talking about. There's the Fender knobs. You can see nice crisp numbers on there. They look really good. Now, Fender knobs have always looked a little cheap to me, but in comparison, these look fantastic. The switch feels great. It's about as good a switch as I've felt, nice and firm, but it moves nice, no play. Let's segue to the Jet. Okay, here's the Jet switch. Actually, it feels really good. Feels like a Japanese switch, but not as good as the Fender. That Fender switch felt great. Let's take a look at the pickups. These are some type of probably generic pickup, but they do have staggered pole pieces somewhat. It's fairly minimal, but they're kind of cheap looking. We'll get into sound samples in a bit, but let's segue and see what that Fender Plus Deluxe has. Okay, so the Fender Plus Deluxe has the Fender lace sensors in here, which are obviously a premium upgraded pickup. I'm not sure how that will come out in the sound samples. I would think these will sound better, but let's take a listen. The plastic on the pick guard, hardly worth note. You know, it's a 3-ply, really nice. So is the one on the Jet. Now this has non-aged plastics, so they're nice and white. And depending on your visual preference, I kind of like the Jet a little better. I like cream plastics. Let's segue just to see the difference here. Okay, so you see what I mean. The Jet is kind of a creamed out yellow. These are a little too yellow, but if they were all that color, it would be great. So that's something to keep in mind. Now the back of the guitar, the Jet comes with a back cover plate, and the neck plate has a little plastic thing underneath it, if you like that. This one says Jet. Let's see what the Fender's like. Surprise, the Fender one says Fender. It looks like there's a micro tilt adjust on the neck, thus the little hole in the neck plate. So that's a cool feature. The Jet would not have that. So I think that's a complete visual comparison of the two guitars. Just looking at them, I don't think there's a lot of difference. Really, it comes down to preference. If you're a big Fender guy, you're going to love this. This is a great guitar. And if you're open to new ideas or new brands and cheap guitars, you're probably going to love the Jet. But let's see how they sound. I won't really pick which one I like because I love cheap guitars, and it would be hard to justify the price difference for me. That being said, I also appreciate these guitars from a collector standpoint. I'd love to have one of each, you know, and all that stuff. And certainly you don't see a lot of these Plus Deluxe kicking around. So that's from 1991. And let's see how it does compared to a 2023 cheap guitar. All right, cheers.